But the Falcon and the Winter Soldier was the by far the best one. But with that said, let's go ahead and move to the next thing, which is a spoiler review of WandaVision episode 5, which I have literally a lot to unpack on this because this episode, out of the 4 prior episodes, have a lot to digest just in one episode. And it astounds me that they've made a Marvel show. Just think about that. A Marvel show where you really don't have any type of action thus far. And I'm not talking about like Monica Rambeau being thrown out of the hex as they call it now, but I'm talking about like pure action, like an action scene, car chase, fighting, whatever. We have not had any of that up to this point, and for some reason they're able to keep, the attention of the people that's watching it, because as you're watching it from episode 1 to episode 1 to episode 5, it's then gotten better as as everything starts to unravel, not even just behind the scenes of just how everything is getting to where it's gotten, but just with everything falling apart with the kind of like reality that Wanda has created. Because in this episode, a lot, just on the surface and under the surface stuff has came out, and you start to realize stuff. So yeah, like I said, it's a lot to unpack. It's a lot of just stuff falling apart, because throughout the whole episode, you have Vision really just trying to find out what the hell is going on after speaking with people, because he's able to take people out of their mind, out of the mind control that Wanda has them under, and actually get some type of bits of information. And he's done that to a guy that he works with, and we realize that it hurts to be under that mind control, and that people are freaking out when he does the thing, takes his coworker out of her mind control. It's like he starts freaking out. Like, I need to call my wife. Like, he just starts freaking out. So you can tell, like, they're cognizant of what's going on, but they just can't stop themselves. It's not like they're, blacked out and then, just, the mind control takes over and they can't remember everything. They know everything that's going on. They know what they're saying. They know how they're acting. It's just they can't, control themselves or speaking and acting in a way that Wanda wants them to speak and act. And so, but this episode takes place in the late 80s, early 90s, and it's kind of like a Full House, Growing Pains, and other type of shows around that era. And so, with saying that, this episode feel more nostalgic for me because I am a late 80s baby and a 90s kid. So I am more familiar with, a Full House, somewhat of Growing Pains. That wasn't just like my cup of tea, but, shows that came out around that decade or within that time frame is more, familiar to me than, I Love Lucy's and Brady Bunches and stuff. The episodes, they kind of like covered the time frame of that. So, but this episode is a lot more intense than the other previous episodes, and it's really within the things that you discover going along the way, especially with the stuff with Vision. But it gets to the point where Vision just constantly gets closer, and as he gets closer, he gets a little bit more antsy, like he wants to know. He basically demanding answers from Wanda to the point where they're at a standoff, where he literally flies up and she flies up ready to go for battle, but it's all coming out of passion. And also we find out that Vision has no memory of before. I mean, because of course in Infinity War he was killed twice, first by Wanda and then by Thanos. So he has no memory of anything before he was awakened in the Hex. And he's trying to figure out what the hell is going on. So all he's getting from Wanda is that everything that's going on is for us. And she's really not giving him anything more than that. And along as we find out, just through the verbal exchange between them is I think Wanda may only be able to control adults because he did basically come out and ask her like, why isn't there any kids around? You know, what happened to all the kids? Even though in a episode prior, I think it was episode 2, you have them doing like a magic show for a school which has kids in it. But if there's no kids around, what the hell is going on? And so he's questioning that. So more than likely, it's to the fact where she probably can only mind control adults, and it's harder to control with kids. Which I'm gonna, it's I guess you could say it's kind of hinted in the way that she tries to control her kids. Now, it could be due to the fact that her kids have abilities. Because in the comic books, I'm not well versed in there, but in the comic books, her kids have abilities, so they more likely carry that on to the show. So it may be due to the fact that her kids have abilities to the point where they're hard to control because she's a very powerful person, Vision is very powerful, so it's like the kids are going to be extremely powerful. So that's probably due to the fact of that, but maybe it's also due to the fact that she can't control kids because when we see the kids, they're babies and they're crying, and it gets to the point where she can't take it, and they end up getting older. I think like around 7 or 8 or something like that. They become little kids, and then they keep growing throughout the show or throughout the episode. And it seems like she can't control it because once it gets to the point where the dog dies and she says that you'll understand or it gets better when you get older, she realized that she has to tell him like, don't get older, don't get older, which shows that she has no control over that. So more than likely, it is due to the power that they hold, maybe just inside the hex, or maybe she just also just can't control kids. So it's maybe it's just either one or the other, or maybe it's just a balance of both. But it is very interesting. But it's like also like from this episode, it really sinks in what this episode is, well, what this show is really all about. Because when you look at the episodes and the reason why she's doing this, it's like it's all about grief. You know, when you look back at the other movies, now, I mean, as far as a writing standpoint, you know, as like an actual writer of these movies, you more than likely can't spend too much time on the mind frame of Wanda. You have to deal with whatever that movie is about. And I get that. But up to this point, we haven't heard too much about her brother. You know, nobody has really said too much about it. She hasn't spoken on it like that. So in these episodes so far, we've heard more about people asking about Petro than we've heard before this show aired. And with them doing that, you kind of know that they were getting up to that point. They was putting it in people's minds, like, you know, like Wanda has. And it's when you get down and think about this episode, it really just all about loss. It's all about depression and just grief, you know, and just how a person deals with it. And this is how Wanda's dealing with it. She can't, like, she's lost her brother. She's lost her family first, her mother and father. Then she lost her brother in Age of Ultron. And then she lost Vision before, you know, the blip. And now it's like she has really nobody else that, you know, that she's that close to. And so this is her way of bringing all that to life to where she don't have to live without Vision. And as we can see, apparently, that she don't have to live without her brother, which I'm going to speak on that in a little bit. But it really is just all about loss. It's all about just, you know, trying to deal with it. And how she can't deal with it and just, you know, it's one of those deeper episodes. And I just love the way that they kind of like circled this whole show just really around that. And it makes it a little bit more deeper than what we would see on the surface. I mean, it's not just your temporary, not temporary, but it's not just your typical, you know, show where it's just surface level, this and that. It's a superhero show, and then it's about, this and that. It's like it goes deeper. It makes it more relatable. But all around, this show is just floating with the existence of the situation to where, uh, oh my god, like this, it's a really, I just love where they were going with this as far as it goes. It's just, to me, it's genius. It's genius, especially even when the dog Spark or Sparks or whatever dog name. I mean, it comes from the comic book, but even when he dies, it's still dealing with loss, and that's when it hit me. Like, okay, this is constantly dealing with loss, and how the kids have to deal with it, and it's just all around. This episode is just crazy, all the way up to the point that we see Evan Peters come back and reprise his role as Quicksilver. But if you all know, he was Quicksilver in the X-Men movies, most definitely. And it's just, I found that funny as hell. I really did. That, that they didn't bring back Aaron Taylor Johnson for, this role, that they would squeeze that in there. Because I'm like, I know that will freak a lot of people out. And I was reading something that the creator, he wanted to basically bring him in there, but he wanted, basically Kevin Feige told him he could do it, but it has to make sense. And so this to me makes sense as far as right now. We don't know what's going to happen with the other later episodes, but to bring him in as kind of like a cameo and just to recognize the fact that, a lot of characters get recast, like the actors, it may be played by a different actor and everything else. They recognize that because you hear Darcy even say she recast her brother, and just the fact that they chose Evan Peters to play her brother in this movie is just crazy as hell. And I'm pretty sure that they knew that was going to bring a lot of speculation, a lot of talk, and make this episode, on top of what they've layered in this episode, another thing to talk about. And really just run in, because a lot of people believe that this is what's going to happen. This is a way to bring the X-Men into the MCU, and that he is going to stay permanently and be Quicksilver and everything else. And because this is the first part of the multiverse trilogy, which is WandaVision, the third Spider-Man movie, part of the Homecoming series, and then it's gonna lead or end in Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness, which is gonna have Wanda in there. More than likely, this is a kind of way of doing it in that type of sense. Maybe she has a hand in why it happens. So I don't know. But it was a big surprise. It really was, because I kind of figured when they showed the back of his head, I'm like, that's Pedro, that's Quicksilver, and like I'm thinking that's Aaron Taylor Johnson. But then I'm like, man, what if it was the other Quicksilver? And bam, it's the other Quicksilver. So it's just now that they have the Fox property, they're gonna be able to do a lot more stuff like this with the characters and even just the actors if they wanted to, if it does make sense, which I thought this was just gold. I really thought it was just gold. But yeah, it shows a lot. It shows that they're bringing a lot of stops out to this show and just really just trying to do the best thing that they can, and it shows. And up in this episode, it also shows the first time that Wanda, knowingly to us, has stepped outside the hex, and she does it in a badass just type of way. There's a drone that's being flown up in there. She comes out dragging the drone in her regular kind of like attire that we normally are used to seeing Wanda in, and she literally threatened, like, stay out of my home, leave me alone, and I'll leave you alone. And so they basically tell her that, we can't do that. You're holding people hostage. Like, this isn't cool, Wanda. And so basically, before she goes back into the hex, she uses her power and turns everybody's gun on the I guess the director of Sword, and just walks back into it, and she does something, maybe makes it more, makes it stronger and penetrable. I don't know, but she just does something that I believe that's what she's doing. Anyway, but also it shows that Sword has footage of her breaking into their facility, taking Vision's body and leaving with it. More than likely they're doing experiments, trying to do what Shield did with the Satiri Tech from the first Avengers movie, and just trying to figure out like how can we weaponize Vision and everything else. So it's like I feel like Sword in some type of capacity may end up becoming the kind of villain for right now in this series. You have Monica Rambeau as kind of the hero, and then you have a villain in the making with Wanda, which I think everything is going to be taken from her again, which is going to take her to start driving a multiverse type thing. That's why I feel like she's going to play the villain in Doctor Strange, and a lot of the multiverse stuff that happens is more than likely going to be caused by her, since she's showing that she has immense power at this point to even just do what she's been doing from episode 1 to now. So I think that's where they're going to be going, and really she's just showing the motive of a, I guess you could say, great villain or a sympathetic villain, someone that we can relate to. We understand why this villain is doing this, and she's not doing it because like, oh, I want to be evil now. It's like she's sad, she's depressed, like she is grieving. She doesn't want to live without her brother and the person that she's in love with. And so now it's like she's gonna do whatever it takes to get that. So she may go above and beyond and may end up doing a lot more damage than she is doing good, and it's all for the sake of just not being without the people that she loves. And it's just, it literally is, man, they just pulling out all the stops when it comes to this show. And they do make a statement which kind of like was funny, but when you think about it, it's like, how would they know? So they made a statement about how, Wanda and Captain Marvel both could have took down Thanos single-handedly and everything else, and one person saying like Captain Marvel did, they could have, and then the other person said that like Wanda, she could have, or whatever. But then it's like, how would they know? They wasn't there during the battle. So, and then a lot of them were just waking up from that point. So it was like, how did they know? It wasn't no helicopters or drones that we know of flying around the area and, just taking pictures and recording everything. But it was like, how did they even know, that Captain Marvel did come close to taking out Thanos, and that Wanda most definitely came really extremely close to being able to take down Thanos if he wasn't like raining fire or whatever at that point. So it just kind of like, how would they even know? I mean, that's something that, us as an audience member would, discuss amongst each other, but it's like, nah, that's just something that those characters wouldn't have known. And they need to explain that. How would they even know? But other than that, man, that is really all I have to say about it. Like I said, it's a lot to unpack for this episode. Like it has an extreme amount of just stuff to just soak in, And I feel like this is one of the better episodes, if not the best episode thus far. But I mean, so far they are just literally knocking it out the park. I just can't wait to see the other, episodes and seeing where it all leads to. Because I feel like after this show ends, we're gonna be like, oh, we need to see Homecoming 3. We need to see this movie now, and that comes at the end of this year. So we're gonna have to wait. Man, we're gonna have to wait. What seems like it's gonna be forever, but Homecoming 3 seems to be, and that's not the real title, but Spider-Man Homecoming 3 is coming out at the end of this year, so